there's going to be a lot of things to talk about in today's weather forecast. We actually have 4 different weather events that'll be occurring over the next 7 days across the United States, including the threat for severe weather, and as well as a potential nor'easter that could dump feet of snow in the northeast, and as well as a December heat wave and atmospheric rivers that could lead to feet of rain. Yes, feet of rain in parts of the Pacific Northwest. And we're going to break down all of that here for you in today's forecast. And this is what it looks like on the future radar for the next few days. This is today. Again, notice we have this large storm that is located over areas in now the Midwest. This was impacting yesterday the southern plains, brought that conditional tornado risk that never panned out. That is now moving off to the north and east, and it is actually bringing some snowfall across parts of the Midwest today. Overall, nothing too concerning. It's going to melt off probably pretty quickly, and honestly, a lot of it's going to be a slushy snow due to how warm it is. Notice there are some showers and storms back near the Gulf Coast. This is an area to watch for severe weather both today and tomorrow. We might see a couple of tornadoes and maybe some damaging winds in parts of the southeast, so definitely have a tornado action plan in place. Back over in the Pacific Northwest, this area is going to be extremely active over the next 7 to 10 days, and I'm going to break down this event for you more in detail later in this forecast. But honestly, this will be pretty crazy. We're talking upwards of, again, a foot of rain in some areas back over in the Pacific Northwest. Once we go through this weekend, that low pressure system moves through the northeast. This is not your nor'easter, by the way, that might be in play, meaning, again, it's not set in stone quite yet. Notice down in the southeast, we're actually going to have a second low pressure system attempt to develop. It might or might not develop, but either way, we're still looking at a lot of rainfall back down in the southeast, but the atmospheric rivers will continue across parts of the Pacific Northwest. And then once we go into Monday, notice there is that potential for a nor'easter late Sunday night into Monday. That'll be the time frame to watch for, and we could easily see a foot of snow or more in parts of the New England region. And then once we go into late Monday into Tuesday, a small clipper system, very possible back over in the Midwest. We might get some snow out of this. We also might just get a little bit of rain in some areas, but overall doesn't seem to be any big winter storm. And then once we go into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, we are going to get a huge pattern change. We are talking about the potential for an omega block pattern to attempt to return, something I've not really mentioned at all in the last several months, and this could lead to that December heat wave, which a heat wave in December isn't the same as the summer, by the way. We're talking, again, it's going to feel warmer than usual, but it's not going to be like 90 degrees across the Midwest, for example. It's going to probably be in the 50s or 60s more than anything. And then this would be late next week. Things become a bit more uncertain, but it looks pretty active across parts of the Midwest and as well as the Northeast. That is where the most active weather pattern would be in place across the United States in this sort of instance. Now, let's first begin with the winter storm potential in the Northeast as we go into Sunday into Monday. This is about Sunday at about 12 o'clock or so. And notice a lot of rain activity across the Northeast with the European model resembling that. But once we go into the evening hours, we'll have to watch for a low pressure system offshore. And again, this is a bit of a question mark. Will this be offshore? Will it be inland? How strong will it be? How much rain are we looking at? Those are still a couple of those uncertainty points that need to be figured out over the next 24 hours, which they will be. And we'll talk about more on that in our next forecast, so make sure you subscribe to the channel once this becomes more certain. But obviously, one of the things that we do need to watch for is the potential for snow and as well as travel impacts to go along with that. Right now, the likelihood of us seeing snow in northern New England is much higher than southern New England. I think this area will be much more of just rain, and then we'll have a lot more snow back up into parts of central and northern New England. This is going into Sunday around midnight or so. So Sunday night into Monday morning. That's the time frame here. And notice we're looking at a lot of snow across northern New England, some of which will be heavy. We'll have a mixed line probably around the New Hampshire and Massachusetts border, and then also the hills in western Massachusetts will have a chance for some snowfall. And then once we get closer to about 6 to 7 in the morning on Monday, there's still snow falling, and then eventually as we go into the afternoon hours, all of that activity starts to clear out with only some flurries left over or some light snow. You might be wondering how much snow might we see here in the Northeast? And again, I said might. It's not, again, set in stone by any means, but the European model, if this all pans out, we could easily see upwards of 6 to 12 inches of snow in parts of northern New England. And meanwhile, look at this. Nothing back down in southern New England. That's basically what we're looking at here, and this is kind of typical for a nor'easter. This does happen quite often. Another thing we'll have to watch for, by the way, is the potential for a lot of wind that could lead to some blowing snow. So if you're in northern New England, keep that in mind as well. We'll probably see some pockets of a foot of snow, maybe a little bit more than that as well, but it's not going to be the longest lasting event. This is going to be a pretty quick moving system, so I don't think we're going to be looking at a widespread 1 feet of snow everywhere in New England. It'll be a pretty isolated area. A lot more areas, though, we'll see between 6 to 12 inches. inches. Now to our next weather event in the United States, severe weather. Yes, this is still ongoing. It is still a threat, even though there was a conditional tornado risk yesterday that never panned out. We still have to watch for severe weather both today and tomorrow for flying fences Friday and suspicious storms Saturday. Right now, there is a marginal threat of severe weather, currently including parts of southern Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, and Louisiana for today. Overall, it's not the most concerning thing you'll ever see, but it is definitely something to watch for an isolated tornado or two. Those, by the way, would be on the brief side of things. We're not talking about long-tracked and really strong tornadoes by any means. Also, the potential for some isolated damaging winds. And then heading into tomorrow for Saturday, we are looking at another marginal threat of severe weather, slightly further to the east, but overall including many of the areas that are already in a risk for today. Main concern, again, would be a brief tornado, and as well as maybe some isolated damaging winds. Here's the infrared imagery, giving you an idea of those showers and storms that are already ongoing across parts of the southeast today. Again, more of this is to come. The reds showing and also the oranges showing those higher cloud tops. That would indicate some thunderstorm activity in the southeast. So just kind of give you a perspective there. Here's the future radar for today, beginning with around 1 o'clock this afternoon. Notice showers and storms stretching from southern Alabama back into the Gulf of Mexico. What we need to watch for going into the afternoon will be this area in particular. So southern Alabama near Florida, for example, a couple of these storms could produce an isolated tornado threat along with damaging winds. And then once we go into the late afternoon, so around 6 o'clock tonight, more showers and storms still ongoing over in Florida, but there will also be another round of storms across southern Louisiana. Those could produce an isolated tornado risk along with some isolated damaging winds. Overnight into Saturday, we'll be watching mainly for storms in the Florida Panhandle and as well as southern Alabama and Georgia, and then eventually going into the late afternoon and evening, most of the storms do clear out by then. So overall, again, not the most concerning severe weather event you've ever seen, but you still want to make sure you have a tornado action plan in place and just take the proper precautions just in case there are any tornado warnings in your area. All right, let's talk more about the December heat wave that is coming up, and this is going to be a pretty big one. Obviously, we don't usually have quote-unquote heat waves in December, but this would be a quote-unquote December heat wave with the temperatures that we're going to see, not by any means anywhere compared to like summer, for example, where we see temperatures in the 90s in the Midwest. This would be more like the 60s and 50s, but again, that's well above average. So let me give you an idea of what we're actually talking about here. This week, we're going to again have that troughing going on in the Midwest going into Sunday into Monday. So this area in particular will be below average in terms of temperatures. But by around Tuesday into Wednesday, notice this big ridge that is going to come out of the Pacific Ocean, and we're going to see a huge ridging here. And this is going to allow for a lot of heat across the Great Plains, the Montana area, the Pacific Northwest. Many areas will turn into above average temperatures, and even going into Friday, we'll have a lot of areas in the southern tier of the United States above average by that point. So what does this look like on the temperature anomalies? And the red, by the way, shows you above average temperatures, and blue would show you below average temperatures. This is all in Fahrenheit, so if you see -6, that's -6 below average. So again, we're talking about 6 degrees below average in that particular location. This is going into Saturday into Sunday, so heat continues in the southeast and as well as the northern plains. Notice as we go into next week, though, we really start to get really hot, especially in Montana. 30 degrees above average as we go into Tuesday evening. That is insane, to be honest with you. This is kind of what we start to see, though, in El Nino patterns. We really start to get a lot warmer air up here. This is going into Wednesday. 30 to 35 degrees above average across the Dakotas, and as we go into Thursday, it starts to simmer down a little bit, but it's still going to be pretty impactful across much of the United States. As we get closer to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of next week, this just doesn't go away. So unfortunately, this is going to be a pretty big deal for the first 2 weeks of December. Hopefully, we start to get a bit more of an active weather pattern where some cold fronts plow through by mid-December, but it doesn't look like anything's coming in the next 7 days by any means. Last thing I want to talk about is the atmospheric rivers in the Pacific Northwest. We are going to see endless rain here over the next several days. This is Sunday into Monday. Again, notice the multitude of these showers and storms are going to be entering into the Washington and Oregon regions, and we're going to see a lot of rain, even Wednesday and Thursday of next week. I mean, it just doesn't leave. By the time we get to next weekend, this should clear out, but we are probably going to be in for a good 7 days of just straight up rain almost every day. Now, not all day, every day, but obviously some days we'll have pretty active weather. Overall, in terms of rainfall totals, this is what the European model is thinking right now. We could see a widespread 4 to 8 inches of rain across areas in western Washington and Oregon. Even we could get upwards of a foot of rain in a few locations. So again, make sure you're staying safe out here. Turn around, don't drown. And again, we'll keep posted with the latest. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video.